Hi. So I'm about to play you a song on the piano. Mentira, as they say in Spanish. That's a lie. I'm not about to play you a song on the piano, but there is a piano here. And I realized that it's a nice little prop or an object that I can use to share something that's worth sharing, I think. I used to play the piano, and yet I can't anymore. I really can't. And I used to play the flute, and I can still play the flute, but I am very, very afraid when I play the flute. I can't have anybody listen to me. I basically I can't play, because if you play the flute but nobody can listen to you, you essentially don't play the flute, because it's a loud instrument, and you can't put it's not like the piano that you can now put earphones on and plug in. It's something that people hear when you play, and I can play it so people want to listen. So basically, I don't play the flute. I tried to get back into it. I have the most amazing music teacher who helped unblock my creativity around music, but the flute is still the thing we haven't yet tackled, because there's so much there. So we moved from the flute to singing to songwriting, and that's something that I am now doing all the time with Jere, my teacher, who's just a godsend. He speaks Spanish. If you speak Spanish, message me. I will send you his contact information. He's incredible, but he teaches in Spanish. So anyways, the point is, we have these things that we learned as kids or as teenagers, and sometimes we kept doing them, and sometimes we stopped. And when we stop, sometimes it's really hard to get back into it. And so, I mean, that can be the hardest part. I remember when I wanted to get back into playing the flute, I would cry when people were playing music, and I had my flute with me, and I couldn't play it. I had my parents send me my flute when I lived in a house where they were all musicians, thinking maybe now I'll play, and I couldn't. And it's gotten better, and I made progress with Jere, my teacher, a lot of progress, but I still don't feel comfortable playing in front of other people. Now, imagine if instead of playing the flute, I were talking about speaking English, right? How many people, how many of us, how many of you, and in my case, it would be Spanish, but how many of my students got kind of not so great English instruction as children, maybe got better, maybe reached C1 or B2 or B1, and then they stopped speaking English, or stopped learning English for whatever reason, right? And that's very common. And then there's this time where you want to get back into it, but you don't, for many reasons, right? So then you finally do, and you decide that you're going to master the thing that you began to do when you were very young, and you stopped doing, and now you're going to master it, right? And then a lot of things come up, right? There's a lot of emotional baggage, a lot of memories, a lot of maybe there are teachers who weren't kind, who were judgmental, maybe there were peers in your classroom who picked on you. Maybe we often have such a history behind our acquisition of a skill, especially something we've been doing for a long period of time. And I just think that needs to be acknowledged. I mean, maybe my example of playing the flute is not the best. I'm not, the best. It's not the best example, because I'm still working on it, and it's something that I know I will get to, but I'm not doing right now. But music has come back into my life. So the way my music teacher works, and it's a similar way, he's a mentor to me as well. Is sort of like, if it's difficult in that area, let's go that way. Instead of pushing and pushing and pushing, we made some progress. I can now play a song, record it, and play it for somebody. That was huge progress. That took a year to be able to play a song record it on the flute, record it and play it for somebody or send it to somebody in a message. But then we got to a point where we weren't moving. So what did we do? We switched to singing because I love to sing and my blocks in that area are different. So we moved into that area. Then we moved into songwriting, which is something I used to do as a kid, as is singing, but always on my own. I never had instruction, and that made it easier. I didn't have as much emotional. There wasn't a story behind it. There wasn't all this stuff. There wasn't a lot of baggage around singing and songwriting. So I have less fear. So anyways, we went in that direction, and we'll come back to the flute. I know we will. Maybe I'll come back to the piano. Who knows? But the point of all of this is to say that if something is really challenging with your English journey, if you're with your, I always keep saying that, I get tired of hearing myself say it. But if there's something that's troubling you about the way that you're learning English or the way that you're trying to return to English, just remember that you have a bunch of different options you can choose from. You have speaking, you have writing, you have listening, and you have reading. And you have, what are you reading? Are you reading nonfiction? Are you reading fiction? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you listening to TV? Are you watching TV shows? TV shows can be really hard. Podcasts can sometimes be easier. It's easier to watch a podcast and see the person speaking versus just listening to it. What about listening to an audiobook while reading the text? What about talking to yourself versus only talking to native speakers? What about talking to children in English? They'll laugh. Children often laugh when you speak another language because they just think it's so funny. But they don't laugh at you. They laugh with you. So what about talking to your animals in a foreign language? So there's just many different ways that we can go forward toward mastery. And I just want to sort of just throw it out there as a reminder that it's normal to reach phases of feeling stuck, of feeling blocked, and that there's no reason that you need to stay there, but that sometimes we need to go around. Sometimes we need to say, okay, I'm not feeling so great when I'm speaking English right now out loud to in a classroom, for example. So instead, I'm going to set an alarm and I'm going to leave myself audio messages for just myself, just in the voice memo thing for 5 minutes every day for myself. I'm not going to speak to others. I'm going to speak to myself like a child that would do. That's how children learn to speak their first language, right? They do a lot of playing around with sounds by themselves and with their peers, but their peers who are at the same level. So that's just one example, right? Maybe you want to listen to more music in English and read the lyrics as you listen. And maybe you want to do that with one song a day. Maybe, just remembering that if you get stuck, if there's an obstacle, if there's a roadblock, you can go around it. And then it doesn't mean that it doesn't say anything about you or that there's anything wrong with you or that there's anything wrong with your English that you're experiencing that obstacle or that challenge. It just may mean that the way you're going forward needs to change. And, so I just wanted to throw that idea out there and hope you have a lovely week and talk to you next week. All right. Goodbye.